frontline border officers. What would you say, how would you describe the current atmosphere, the working atmosphere in CBSA? Would you consider it toxic? Would you consider it good? What would be the words that you would use to describe the workplace culture right now in CBSA after the Conservative cuts and the Liberal refusal to actually restore those cuts?
Yeah, in general, I would say poor to toxic. That has to do with the staffing numbers, which have not gone up. That has to do with an over-reliance on technology, and both of those combined sees our officers working really hard to do the job that they signed up to do, which is to protect Canadians, to keep things out of Canada that we don't want to come into Canada. That's why they take the job. And, often the sense that they get at the workplace is that they really can't do that anymore, which is... it's, again, disheartening and really difficult conditions for them to be working under.
And you mentioned that you do have hope that things may change. What would be the advice that you would give public accounts in terms of what recommendations we should be making to the government to ensure that a debacle like ArriveCan, we've seen other debacles under the Conservatives, we saw Phoenix, again, Liberals continued. What are the recommendations that you can make that would actually ensure that our borders are effectively invested in, and that border service officers can do the terrific work that they do in the most effective way possible? What are the things that we should be recommending?
I mean, our borders need to be staffed. We desperately need staff, as I said, between 2,000 or 3,000 officers countrywide. We need to stop replacing officers with technology. That has to be there to assist officers, not to replace them. Again, an app is not going to interdict anything, and I think that that over-reliance on technology, it's really embedded in the CBSA. The former CBSA president, John Osowski, sits on the advisory board of the Future Border Coalition, whose main mandate is advancing technologies, to largely speed up the border, and not too much focus on security there. They have been pushing for advancement of mobile app technology since pre-COVID, since 2018. So we really need to stop thinking that there's a magic technology bullet that's going to fix the situation at our borders. I think the other thing the agency could look at is that you could go the next decade without hiring another manager, and you'd likely still have too many.
Thank you very
certainly
much.
in North Portal, Saskatchewan.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Attrition would make a difference.
Beginning our next round, Mr. Brock, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of the narratives that have been circulated here in Ottawa across Canada is one, that this ArriveCan app saved lives. From the Prime Minister down to ministers, down to rank and file Liberal members, they've all claimed that. It has recently been debunked by some Liberal members who have a medical background, as well as the Public Health Department. There was no empirical evidence that it saved lives. What do you feel, sir, as the union president, with respect to some of the concerns along those lines? Do you feel personally that the app, in fact, did save lives?
Difficult for us to tell. Again, our officers' jobs during the pandemic were largely to collect information for another agency. The app did a poor job of collecting it, so it was really an uphill battle to keep the border moving and to help people provide the information that was legally required for them to provide to get through the border. There was no way around it for us.
You, in a response to a question put to you by Ms. Block about how that $60 million could have been better utilized at your agency, I think you referenced upwards to 500 to 600 new officers could be hired. At this current pace right now, what is the CBSA operating at in terms of a management deficit, a frontline officer deficit?
Again, between 2,000 and 3,000 short countrywide. We can graduate under 600. I think we have one college, if they graduate the maximum number of officers per year, it's approximately 592 per year. They're not at maximum because we don't have enough people to take from the line to train them. That's how short it is.
Another erroneous narrative from Justin Trudeau, our Prime Minister, is that he was responsible for adding thousands of new positions to the CBSA. I think it's inaccurate because he often says that it was the Harper government that slashed frontline officers. But you were asked that question essentially when you appeared at SECU. The question was, over the last 8 years, we know that the current Liberal government added only 25 frontline officers to the CBSA. Is that correct?
Those numbers sound about correct, yes.
25 officers. Okay. And that's why we have the porous borders. That's why we have an influx of illegal guns. That's why we have containers that are not being properly scanned. That's why we have a problem with opiates entering into our country. That's why we have a problem with car thefts. Not enough resources to utilize the technology that does exist. There is no current appetite with this current Justin Trudeau government to properly secure our borders. Is that an accurate statement, sir?
I would say the lack of staff has made everything that you've mentioned more acute, absolutely, yes.
Do you feel that the current President, Aaron O'Gorman, has engaged the union in a meaningful way or has made any meaningful progress for frontline officers?
In terms of hiring more staff, I'm not aware. Again, she's the president of the CBSA. The budget being what it is, I believe there's a limit to how many officers can be graduated given the money that is available. In terms of advancing some other issues around the toxicity at workplaces, there has been some positive. I have to remain positive and keep trying at it. I've been doing this a long time. I do see hope there, yes.
We talked about punitive correctional measures being utilized across the board, particularly at the CBSA. We know that there are 2 individuals who deem themselves to be whistleblowers who used to work at the CBSA and brought forth evidence implicating people from the CBSA, including not only past President Osowski, but current President O'Gorman, down to Canada's Chief Technology Officer, Min Doan, who's now been accused of deleting up to 30,000 emails surrounding his involvement in the ArriveCan scam, have not been disciplined at all, but yet 2 individuals who pointed fingers have been. How do you feel as a union president in terms of the measures taken by literally President O'Gorman and instructing presidents and deputy ministers of the other ministries?
Difficult to know. We're not on the inside of the investigation. Again, we see this with our members all the time. Who is on leave without pay pending the outcome of an investigation? What is investigated? Who is interviewed? All of those things often seem quite arbitrary to us as well.
On the face of this
very quick question, Mr. Brock.
On the face of this outrageous fleecing of taxpayers, did any frontline border officers get a performance bonus like management did?
None of our members have ever received one of those.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor for up to 5 minutes, please.
5 minutes. Well, thank you very much, Chair. I do want to say to Mr. Weber how much I appreciate as being the Member of Parliament for Chateauguay-Lacal. I have the Lacal border, very busy border crossing, and a number of folks in my entourage do work at the border. So I appreciate the work that the agents perform, and I can understand it's very intense, and at the best of times, and then of course during the early days of the public health crises, when really no one knew what was going on, and we had to close the border, what that meant for workers, for the officers at the front. Maybe you can just describe briefly those first few days when the emergency order to close the border was put through. What did that look like?
Yeah, confusing. I had a lot of members who would go to the news to know what they were supposed to do that day, to give you an idea of how chaotic and disorganized it was at times. There was often little direction. Travelers would show up. We weren't sure exactly what the procedure was early on. So difficult. Pandemics happen. That was an emergency. No one knew where it was going to go. We did the best we could through it. Once the ArriveCan app came in, members brought concerns forward to the union, which we tried to bring to the employer. Really, there seemed to be no willingness to take our input. Again, had our members been consulted early on, I think a great deal of what happened would not have happened. And now what we see is coming out with the investigations. Had we had, certain whistleblower protection, the ability to bring information forward, or some mechanism to do that, I think things might be a little bit different now. But our members don't really have that.
Well, certainly duly noted that's always a best practice, isn't it, to consult the users, and I think that is something that should be taken forward regardless of the circumstances. But was it useful to have something that was a printout, something that was tangible? That an officer could keep afterwards. I'm thinking of what must have been horrendous wait times as the borders were closed, and no doubt there were officers that had been exposed right to COVID and could not show up for work. So. As we learned from the Auditor General, the Arrive Can app did provide better quality information in more rapidly that for quarantine purposes, of course, and for data that needed to be transferred to other bodies such as the provinces and health agencies. So, I heard you earlier, the Arrive Can app does have its uses, does it not?
In collecting information that other agencies wanted, there was usefulness to that. What we questioned at the border was we didn't know anything of what was being done with that information. Again, finding out what address someone is staying at seems somewhat pointless if no one is going to where the person is saying they're staying at. So in terms of follow-up, we didn't know any that was happening.
So I agree. There were definitely issues with the app, and of course, as we heard, it needed a lot of updates and so on, and we'll be discussing that further. But I just wanted, because you are representing the frontline workers, I just wanted to know, would you go back to a paper-based system today?
No, again, I think what we really needed at the border at the time, the requirement was for people to show that they're vaccinated, which most people had on their phone. They were able to show it to us. You had the option of printing it out if you didn't have a phone through which you can do that, and that took mere seconds. I think for our purposes, that's really all we needed.
Very, very good. And I, for my part, certainly am always advocating. I'm speaking to young people all the time because of our close proximity to the Lacal border, that this is an excellent career. But were you aware, I hear my Conservative colleagues talking about how we need more front line resources, but the Mr. Poilievre and his Conservative caucus voted against funding for the CBSA and the RCMP in December. Were you aware of that?
Of the vote, yes, I was.
And that is
that they voted against applying resources. That's right. And if I have any remaining time, Chair, I would like to give it to
I'm afraid
Mr. Julian.
your question went over, but you got the answer you're looking for, I believe. And turning now to Madame Sinclair Desgagnés. Vous avez la parole pour 2 minutes.
Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés, 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Chair.